Coney Island, making its way uptown, shooting back at Manhattan, where we are located in the corner of 49th and Rockefeller Plaza in Studio 1A, getting set for what figures to be a lovely weekend here in New York. Got a good crowd already assembled out front, and good morning. Welcome to today on this Friday morning. Gorgeous day outside, isn't it?
It is beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. A bad day for the prosecutors, wherever they might be. You talk about a gamble that backfired.
I was going to say, that was quite a risk, and I'm sure they thought it was going to be a very different, dramatic moment in the courtroom than it turned out to be.
I think everybody is agreeing, though, Katie, that this was the most dramatic moment of the trial to date, and maybe the turning point for the defense. It has turned out to be just huge, a huge break for the O.J. team. We're going to talk about that in great detail this morning. We'll get the latest from the news desk, and then we'll talk about it with someone who was in the courtroom, observed the reactions of the jury. We'll also talk about it with defense attorney Roy Black. Katie?
Bryant, in the days preceding graduation, a very ugly racial incident has surfaced at Greenwich High School in Greenwich, Connecticut. 5 seniors placed a not-so-secret message of hate in the high school yearbook. It's a very alarming incident. We'll be talking about that in our second half hour this morning. With
an eye towards Father's Day, we'll check out a full-time dad on Capitol Hill and get some notes for expectant fathers. And we have a Today Show first, an outdoor concert right outside Studio 1A. You can see the folks out there setting up. The guys
been jamming all morning.
All morning long. If you're in the area, come on by and give a listen to Earth, Wind, and Fire. Let's go on over to the news desk. Get started with Matt Lauer. Matt, good morning.
All right, Bryant and Katie, thank you very much. Good morning to you, and good morning, everyone. You know the old expression, fits like a glove? Well, it didn't quite fit at the O.J. Simpson trial on Thursday, but was it evidence of Simpson's innocence or acting? The two sides disagree. NBC's David Bloom has more from Los Angeles.
That's People 77.
It was prosecutors who asked that O.J. Simpson try on the bloody gloves worn by the killer last summer. Right. And it was prosecutors who saw their ploy backfire.
Mr. Simpson seems to be having a problem putting the glove on his hand.
As Simpson struggled to slide the gloves onto his hands and turned toward jurors saying they're too small, prosecutors were incensed.
We ask him to straighten his fingers and extend them into the glove.
All right, he appears to have pulled the gloves on, counsel.
Moments later, a former executive of Eris Isotoner, which made the gloves, examined Simpson's hands and told jurors that, if anything, the gloves should have been too big on Simpson.
His hand should be able to fit into that pair of gloves.
Prosecutors suggested Simpson had only pretended the gloves were too small, as he tried them on over a pair of latex gloves, meant to protect the evidence.
Could you tell whether or not he was intentionally holding his thumb in a certain position so he couldn't put the gloves on?
I object that.
Sustained. Sustained. Counsel, the jury observed...
I have nothing further. All
right.
Earlier, a buyer from the department store Bloomingdale's told jurors that the bloody gloves are similar to a pair Nicole Brown Simpson bought in New York in December of 1990. Brenda Vemich testifying that the store sold only 200 pairs of those gloves nationwide that year. Men's, size extra large, color brown. But Johnny Cochran said Simpson wears extra, extra large.
You saw he really couldn't get them on, and even when he had them as far as he could get them without breaking them or making them pull apart, there was still room left in his fingers, and especially at the thumb area. He just couldn't get them on, and there's no two ways about it. He'd be a great actor if he could act and make his hands larger.
The jurors took it all in, watching, scribbling notes. And as the court day ended, Simpson attorney Carl Douglas stood in the rain, smiling, telling reporters the gloves don't fit because O.J. is innocent. David Bloom, NBC News, Los Angeles.
This morning, the prosecution's gamble in what could turn out to be the defining moment of the Simpson trial. Prosecutors set up a dramatic demonstration involving O.J. Simpson yesterday. NBC's David Bloom shows us what happened.
Your Honor, at this time, the people would ask that Mr. Simpson step forward and try on the glove recovered at Bundy as well as the glove recovered at Rockingham.
The first pair of gloves O.J. Simpson put on did fit, but these were latex gloves meant to protect the evidence.
That's People 77.
Then, as jurors watched intently and O.J. Simpson took center stage, the prosecution's strategy began to backfire.
Mr. Simpson seems to be having a problem putting the glove on his hand.
Grimacing and gesturing as he struggled to pull on the leather gloves, which prosecutors claim he wore while committing the murders, Simpson turned to the jurors saying, "They're too small."
Mr. Simpson. The other glove.
This is People's 164A. Is that the right-hand glove?
Yes, Your Honor.
All right. All right, Deputy Jex, would you just take a step back, please? Thank you. All right, records reflect that Mr. Simpson has both gloves. Yes.
Mr. Simpson's indicating that his fingers are all the way into the glove, Your Honor.
All right. Thank you, counsel.
Prosecutors were not amused and made him try again.
Could we ask him to replace the left glove onto his hand?
All right.
Could we ask him to straighten his fingers and extend them into the glove as one normally might put a glove on?
Yeah, I object to this statement by counsel.
All right. He appears to have pulled the gloves on, counsel.
Can we ask him to grasp the marker in his hand like this?
I object to this, Your Honor.
Yes,
I object.
I agree.
Counsel,
Can we ask him to completely grasp the marker in his hand,
Yes.
whether it's waived or not?
Yes. All right. Thank you, counsel.
Thank you.
No longer an issue of cross-contamination, Your Honor. I have nothing further.
All right.
Prosecutors argued that Simpson, the actor, was faking it. The gloves, in fact, do fit. But it was prosecutors who were in a fit Thursday. They had tried to spring a trap on O.J. Simpson and instead had ensnared themselves. For today, David Bloom, NBC News, Los Angeles.
Court TV's Dan Abrams was inside the courtroom for the drama of the demonstration this morning. He's in our Los Angeles studios. Dan, good morning.
Good morning, Brian.
I'm sure you were watching the jury while O.J. tried to put the gloves on. Tell us about the reactions you saw.
Well, they were wide-eyed, scribbling notes. They knew that this was an important moment. You could tell that all of them had their notebooks prepared in their hands, looking up at O.J. Simpson, waiting for this very big moment to occur. And then after what you just saw on television, O.J. Simpson turned away from the camera, walked back towards the defense counsel table, and looked over at his family and friends and gave a face as if to say, "See, I told you so."
O.J. was mumbling in front of the jury while he was trying to put the gloves on. Did they seem to be listening to him?
They did, and Chris Darden knew that they could hear him. O.J. Simpson was standing really only inches from these jurors. He could have touched some of the jurors. So Christopher Darden knew that O.J. Simpson was speaking to the jurors. That's why he said aloud in court, "Mr. Simpson is trying to tell these jurors that the gloves simply don't fit."
Yeah, let me come back to you in just a second. With us in Miami at our affiliate, WTVJ, is noted defense attorney Roy Black. Roy, good morning.
Good morning, Brian.
How big a disaster was this for the prosecution?
I would say it's hard to underestimate this. You have to think that, you know, jurors who are leaning towards O.J. are now going to say this is evidence of reasonable doubt. And I'll tell you, it's one of those visual moments in a trial that's very hard to overcome. And at the end of this case, the jury is still going to have a powerful memory of that moment.
Was it a bad gamble to begin with, Roy?
Yes and no. You know, it's bad because it didn't work, but I'll tell you this, I was watching it on television, and I kept saying, "Come on, Chris, have them try on the gloves." Of course, then they didn't fit, and I kept saying, "Boy, you were an idiot for doing it."
Is this the kind of decision Darden would made on his own, or was this something made farther up the line?
Oh, I'm sure they have thought about this. This is not something at the last moment. You know, the trial team got together and said, look, when the moment's right, let's make them put on the gloves. And remember what happened right before this. Richard Rubin said these gloves are going to fit. Johnny Cochran tried them on, and they looked too large. So I don't think there was much of a gamble, they thought, and it turned out to be a far bigger gamble than they ever envisioned.
Yeah, knowing jurors as you do, Roy, do these kinds of physical demonstrations generally leave a greater impact than the scientific presentations like those associated with the blood evidence or DNA?
Well, it's more than that, Bryant, because the jurors know that these are two hostile parties. This is totally unrehearsed. I mean, this is happening at the moment. This is not some expert just, you know, giving some paid information about what's happening. It's actually going on in front of them. So I think it's very persuasive to the jurors.
Dan, clearly the prosecution's gamble backfired. Did they further blow it by failing afterwards to detail the history of the glove and how it may have tightened up due to moisture of the blood and confinement?
Well, maybe, and if they haven't done that so far, they're certainly going to do it.
Well, they could have done it yesterday, but they failed to.
Yeah, well, you would expect that they will. What the prosecution actually wanted to do, though, from the beginning, was have O.J. Simpson try on a different pair of gloves. They had brought to court a brand new pair of extra-large Eris gloves. But you heard Mr. Rubin say these are not exactly the same kind of gloves, and so Judge Ito said, we simply can't have O.J. Simpson try on a different kind of gloves. Prosecutors would also say, as you pointed out, that they shrunk, that he's wearing latex gloves, and that they fit.
But that moment has passed, and any words now won't overcome the visual image that was struck yesterday, right?
I think that that's true. They are going to call likely an expert who will measure O.J. Simpson's hand, an expert in gloves who will say, this is a glove that fits. And Mr. Simpson was intentionally trying to avoid having that glove fit, either by separating his fingers or by putting his thumb in there. But whatever the reason, you're right, there is this visual image there.
Dan, I don't want to overstate it, but was this the prosecution's worst mistake to date?
I don't know if it was necessarily the worst mistake. I think it was something that if they could do again, they might not do again. And the problem is, as Roy Black is saying, is that even if one or two jurors just retain this image in their minds, and this is the one thing that they hang their hats on, well, then this was an absolute and total failure for the prosecution.
Roy, again, I don't want to overstate it, but was it the most important moment in the case to date?
I don't know if it was the most important moment. I mean, there's like Dennis Fung's testimony. There's a lot of other testimony that's important. But this has a lot of visual impact. And I think Dan is being very gracious by saying they might want to undo this. I can assure you that the prosecution last night was desperate over this. And if there was any way they could have undone this experiment, they would have done so.
They'll try damage control today. How effective can it possibly be in counteracting the image?
Too little, too late. I mean, let's face it. You know, they're going to say that O.J. Simpson was acting, and maybe he was. I mean, he was overplaying it. There's no doubt. He loved every minute of it. But you couldn't help but watch him trying to tug and pull, and he was straining. And I'll tell you, I don't think those gloves fit him. And there may be many good reasons why not. But nevertheless, if a juror's leaning towards O.J., at the end of this case, they're going to say, I don't care what everybody else said. Did you see him try to put on those gloves?
Yeah, if you're working for O.J., is this now the centerpiece of your defense? Do you stand up and say, hey, the gloves didn't fit?
Not only that, but I tend to think that this may now excuse O.J. from testifying. I always thought that he had to testify. But now he was right in front of the jury. He tried on the most damning evidence in the case. He spoke right to them. You know, they're too small. They don't fit.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I think it was a great day for the defense.
All right. Roy Black, Dan Abrams. Guys, thanks very much.
The court had already sentenced one of the main defendants to life imprisonment